Welcome to the Association 100 podcast. The A100 podcast is an extension of our Association 100 bi-monthly newsletter that focuses on best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies and tactics that work in the world of associations. The podcast will feature meaningful conversations with association professionals across the country, taking a deeper dive into trending topics, offering insights that both inform and inspire.
Welcome back to the A100 podcast. I'm Colin Gallagher, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christine Stay. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. We're welcoming Anita Brickman, and Anita is the president and CEO of the Plasma Protein Therapeutics Association, an organization representing more than 1,100 human plasma collection centers in North America and Europe, as well as the manufacturers of life-saving plasma protein therapies. She brings years of experience in communications, public affairs, advocacy, and association leadership with a concentrated focus throughout her career on healthcare. Prior to joining PPTA, she fulfilled simultaneous positions as Senior Vice President, Communications and Public Affairs at the Consumer Healthcare Products Association, as well as Executive Director of the CPHA Educational Foundation. In both capacities, Anita acted as a national spokesperson across all press and publicity channels. And something I really love about her background is that for more than 2 decades prior to association work, she served as a news anchor and medical reporter for WUSA 9 TV here in DC and also for WPVI TV in Philadelphia. Such amazing experiences that I know our listeners will just gain so much from. So, Anita, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
I'm thrilled to be part of this conversation, ladies.
So, you've been in your role now as president and CEO of PPTA for almost a year. Can you share what it was like stepping into this executive leadership position and any of those initial goals you set for either yourself or the organization?
It certainly has almost been a year, but it has flown by so quickly. I think anytime you join a new organization, a new association, it's understanding what is very unique to that culture and the people that are employed in your association. Right out of the gate, I wanted to make sure I had in-depth one-on-one conversations with each person on the staff. Of course, that's easier when you're a smaller staff in an association versus a big company, but I really made it a priority. Also, we have a unique situation here where we have the US-based team, but also a team in Brussels, Belgium. So understanding the cultural differences, but at the same time, continuing this idea of making us more matrix and global, that was a major goal. I also did a lot of work to understand the industry. So as you said, we represent plasma collection centers. Human plasma is the start of these very important medicines and the manufacturers of critical plasma-derived therapies that people with rare diseases need, that are used in shock trauma, bleeding disorders, so many ways. And people just don't know that much about it. And so while I had experience at 2 previous healthcare associations, I had to take a really deep dive into this industry, this unique sector of bio, and understand what the challenges were, both on the plasma collection side, all the way through the medicine manufacturing to the patients in need. So those were my biggest challenges out of the gate and opportunities for getting to know this space.
I love that. And I feel like that's so common because people in the association world do tend to stay in association. So you know the association part of it, but you might have to learn all of this new stuff when you go to an association. So that's really important.
I think it is. What is so great about Washington, D.C. is that we have such a vibrant association community. And I've been able to lean on that. And my previous CEO at CHPA and others within that organization and female leaders, let me say that again. I've been able to lean on my previous CEO at CHPA, other leaders within the association space that I've met through networking opportunities. That helps so much. But yes, whenever you make a move to a new association, you have to learn an entirely new industry. What's been helpful for me is that I've all along focused on healthcare throughout my career.
I love what you were saying about the association world because I feel like there's so many associations out there, but we're a very close-knit group and everybody
Agreed.
wants to help one another. It's a really nice thing to say.
I would totally agree. And I've found such amazing mentorship through the association space. Yes, there are many, but we are concentrated and people are always willing to help each other, give advice, give a step up. I have found it to be a great place to transition into from the world of journalism into the nonprofit space and associations.
I love that your background is as a communicator because that's obviously my world, and then bringing that to the C suite. So, talk about how that shaped your approach and having that skill set.
I think there are a lot of things. First of all, being an effective communicator is not just about how you convey your message, but how you inspire. How do you instill what your strategy looks like, that vision, and get people on board like, let's go do this together. So, instilling that enthusiasm and energy is a really important part of leadership. But so is active listening. If you're constantly just thinking about the next thing to come out of your mouth and not hearing what people are saying to you, you are missing the most important part of the conversation. So to me, active listening is such an important role, especially if you're setting the strategy for a group of people. You must be an active listener. Take time to formulate different opinions, different perspectives, and knowledge inputs, and then set the strategy. So I've used both those skills quite a bit. I also think having been in the newsroom environment where there are constant stressors and curveballs thrown your way, it does help you stay cool under pressure, I would have to say.
So, we also know that effective board collaboration is crucial for any association's success. Can you describe how you've worked with the PPTA board to align on shared goals and strategies?
Happy to do so. PPTA is unique in its structure and certainly different from what I experienced at my previous associations. There is a global executive board that oversees the organization from the global level, but there are subsidiary regional boards focused on the US and broader North America, focused on the EU, as well as on the plasma collection side. So these boards really get into the weeds of the work streams, objectives, and budgetary asks that all go up to the global executive board. So really being a part of all of those board meetings, I've made that a priority. Of course, I have the most direct connection and relationship with my board, the global executive board. I think it's really important to have one-on-ones with your board members as often as you can. I'm fortunate that it's a small board and I can do that. I will also say I'm very lucky to have a highly engaged chair who always makes time for conversation and good counsel, despite his very busy professional career. So I've been very lucky in that aspect. The other thing that I really tried to do when I first came on board after a few months was to initiate kind of a fact finding strategic planning process where I brought in a group to do questionnaires, one on one interviews with key representatives of each board. What is it that PPTA has done? What do you want to see that's different in the future? What are the key objectives we need to focus on to ensure more plasma collection, the continuation of the robust industry for the manufacturing process, and therefore better patient access to medicines? How do we get this done? And that strategic planning process gave me so much information from different members of these different boards. And candidly, I think it was a very positive aspect that I wasn't the one asking the questions. So there might have been more candor than they would have done. Nobody was worried about hurting my feelings in a one-on-one interview. They were very candid about where we needed to go. And for me, that line of sight into the things that they find most important helps shape the 3-year strategy that we've already implemented today.
That's fantastic. And I think that goes along with the fact that the board obviously has charged you with ushering the association into this new era. And I'm sure this 3-year strategy is going to help implement that.
Absolutely. I think collaboration, when you have groups that are international, it is difficult, and trying to break down silos and make sure people aren't doing duplicative work that are very matrix. That is a key part to what we're trying to achieve. I think with this 3-year strategy, we will become very outcomes focused. As you both know, in associations, when you're doing advocacy work, you're trying to influence regulators, you're trying to amplify your message and communications. Sometimes success can be a little more difficult to measure than a profit or loss in corporate America. Looking at what outcomes we're specifically trying to achieve and mapping all work streams against those. Of course, still being nimble, of course, still being ready to adapt and change, but having a roadmap. That is something that I don't think existed here, at least in recent years at PPTA. And I think it will help us usher in a new era. The other aspect of a big change for us is the fact that this association has historically been located in Annapolis, Maryland. Well, what we need to do is be more DC centric because of all the activities on Capitol Hill, where our US regulators are located. So we are in the process of beginning a transition from Annapolis to Washington, DC. But initially, taking communications and government affairs, those people that are the most front facing with our stakeholders, to DC first, while still maintaining some of the core staff that has been loyal to PPTA for years. That's been a huge initiative, and I'm really proud of how the staff has embraced this change because it's a big one.
And speaking of that, with this move, obviously a lot of associations and companies navigating to that return to office poses some unique challenges. I'm sure that there's some challenges with a move and keeping that core staff. How is PPTA approaching this transition along with their staff?
It is a big one, as I mentioned. At the same time, still navigating return to work and flexibility. I personally believe we have all come to value flexibility so much more through the pandemic and post the pandemic. And I think that's here to stay. But what that looks like, I think, is a true quandary for every association. And I talk to my colleagues in the association world quite a bit. What are you doing these days? 2 days, 3 days in the office? Are there core days? Or do teams only come in when they really need to be there? I think we are trying to increase the in-office time and the collaboration time, because I think what can get lost in a truly virtual world is the opportunity for very spontaneous collaboration, learning from your peers, especially if you have a newer person coming into the association. What is the culture if people aren't together? I think the hybrid model is here to stay, and I'm a big advocate of it. But I really think in-person time together, and especially in-person time with members, is critical. So we are emphasizing that. That said, we understand that for some people, this is going to be a longer commute to DC. What kind of benefits, perks can we offer as far as public transit, parking, et cetera, to ease that transition? I do think it will be exciting. Our new office will be just a couple blocks from Capitol Hill. So while there may be challenges in some way in this transition, I think it opens up a whole new world of opportunity, of feeling the energy and the connectedness of DC, and to get more involved in the association community that we've talked about, because it is a vibrant one.
Definitely sounds like the pros outweigh any cons. Any of those cons you can work on, like you said.
I think with the right flexibility and the fact that we're doing a transition plan and still keeping a footprint in Annapolis for a period of time while transitioning the staff fully to DC, I think this was the most appropriate middle road. The board certainly would like to see us in Washington, DC, and I think it is the place for premier associations to be, or in the surrounding areas of the nation's capital.
Yeah, it's so smart that you're taking such a strategic approach, though, because obviously there's so much around going back to the office these days and how you navigate it. But I think wherever you've seen organizations fail is because they have no reasoning, no rationale. It's just, okay, this is our new policy, do it. And they don't think about, is this going to work for people? How will this work for people? What can we offer them to make this, more reasonable or fit their lives better? So taking that strategic approach really helps accomplish everyone's goals that way, the organizations and your employee.
I completely agree. I also think transparency and planning are so important. Whatever the strategy is, you need to be honest about the reasons why, and you need to give people time throughout this process. When I first joined PPTA and realized we were coming up on a lease ending this year, I realized we didn't have a lot of time because, as you can imagine, real estate leases, they're not just for a couple of years. It's a big commitment. And so I had to mobilize a team very quickly to begin the real estate search. But also, it was important to step by step keep the team here in the US office apprised so that this didn't seem secretive or clandestine in any way. We were trying to be upfront about the impending change, what we were going to do to try to make it easier for the people that were going to DC, and my commitment as the CEO to be in both the DC and Annapolis offices moving forward and work to make sure those two groups don't get siloed. So now we're going into even more office spaces than we had before. But I think with the transparency and planning, letting people know months ahead of time before something is coming and the reason why you're implementing that change, I think that is the best way to lead.
So that answer there is why we need more communicators in the C-suite.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
So as an association leader, there's always a struggle and balance. How do you maintain that balance between advocating for your industry's needs and ensuring the organization adapts, especially in an industry like you are when the healthcare landscape is constantly evolving?
It is constantly evolving. And I think for me, I had to take a very deep dive in understanding our particular regulatory challenges and also how we're viewed by policymakers, not just here in the United States, but in the EU. The EU system is incredibly complex, their legislative process, as well as their regulatory structure compared to that of the US. So, first of all, I had to really take a deep dive into all those areas. So I had a keen understanding. When it comes to advocating on behalf of our members, what is so exciting about PPTA and what makes that easier is the outcome that our members and PPTA is seeking. This is to provide better access to plasma-derived therapies for patients. And what is so wonderful about this association is the close relationship with the patients, working with associations in bleeding disorders, such as hemophilia, primary immune disease, neurological conditions. When you meet some of these individuals, we were just at a briefing on Capitol Hill where we had a patient who had been diagnosed with CIDP, a rare disorder that really affects the nerves throughout the body. And to hear him talk about losing his ability to walk, his heart being affected, his health deteriorating rapidly. And then once the diagnosis was made and plasma-derived therapy infusions began, he got his life back. So it is easy to keep your eye on the ball when that is the outcome that you are going for. At the same time, the unique aspect of this industry is these therapies, there's no replication for them for some of our patients. They're not made in the laboratory. They come from human plasma. So encouraging plasma donation, that is such an important thing that PPTA does, but also all the time looking at donor health and safety, making sure we are following the utmost standards from donor to patient, safety and quality the entire way across. I think those are the key areas I focus on and therefore serve the needs of our members in the healthcare landscape.
How rewarding.
Sure is.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the times I worked in different associations and we were always working so hard. And then we remind ourselves, hey, we're not saving lives, but you guys are.
Literally.
Exactly. Because you're thinking, but you do have to put it in perspective because I think we can, whatever industry you're defending, you get behind them 100%. And that is a part of an association. And there is literally almost an association for every industry. But this is really rewarding because you do see the outcomes. And what I do appreciate is that regular interaction with our patient groups who are often with us on Capitol Hill, attending and presenting at our conferences. There's always a constant reminder of why we do what we do.
Yeah. I'd love it if you could share an example of a particularly successful project or maybe a new initiative under your leadership that really shows that new direction that PPTA is heading.
I think this 3-year strategy and really pushing us to become outcomes focused, looking at the future fit across the organization. Do we have the right resources to do what we do? And a culture that is matrix. This is difficult when you've got these disparate offices. And there was actually a period of time between my arrival and the departure of the previous CEO where there was not one leader in place. And as you can imagine, silos can become more pronounced in that environment. So I've really worked hard to remind everyone of the global footprint that we have. We are a small but mighty team, but spread out in different parts of the world. So I've been really proud of trying to initiate greater check-ins, much more collaboration, greater involvement of a broader senior team. I think I'm also very proud of what we've done with the communications here. I candidly made some changes when I came to the association, and communications is at the leadership table. I think that's very important. And it isn't always the case in every association. The communications team we built here is far more proactive, multifaceted, working very hard on media relations in the social space, but also looking at targeted audiences with our policy and advocacy communication. So I'm really proud of some of the new talent that has come into the association.
I love hearing that, and so smart to bring that communications in there. I know I'm biased, but you see it in organizations that don't prioritize comms or don't have comms in the leadership space, and the mistakes they make publicly, it's deadly for their organization.
I think so. And communications can't be the afterthought. It can't be just the last stop of the message out of the association. Of course, communications has to serve, quote unquote, our internal clients within an association. What does the regulatory team need? What kind of leave behinds do our lobbyists need on Capitol Hill? Comms needs to make that happen. But comms can't be brought in at the 11th hour just to get the project out the door or clean up something before it goes out the door. To do it right, I think communications needs to be involved from the beginning and understanding the nuances of the messaging throughout. And that helps the association shine. I really believe that.
And that's perfect segue into the next question. For leaders that are aspiring from these non-traditional background communication to C-suite roles, what advice would you offer on preparing and excelling in these kind of positions?
I think I'm a perfect example of that. 2 decades in broadcast journalism. And then at one point deciding I really wanted to move beyond reporting on healthcare and being a part of healthcare. I think that where we are in Washington, D.C., I think another great city for associations, Chicago, knowing where associations are, I think it is an easier entry place and a welcoming community. I think I was definitely much more drawn to that than corporate America, but that's my bias. But we are talking about associations here. But I think leveraging your unique background as a strength in your leadership journey, but then also realizing, okay, what are things that I don't necessarily have in my toolbox, and who are the people I need to bring in around me to make sure I have the knowledge base and the different skill sets. We really do want diversity of employees and opinion because it makes you better. So looking at what you maybe don't have and making sure that is reflected on your leadership team is really important. And I think investing in continuous learning and professional development. I did a lot through ASAE to make sure I understood all the nuances of association management, taking deep dives into the world of association finances because I'm not a great numbers person, but I need to be, and I need to understand how associations are managed and how budgets are developed, followed, and forecast. I've spent endless hours with my CFO, both at this association and previously at CHPA, to make sure I was really up to speed on all facets of the association governance and the finances. For me personally, I also think if you can find a subject area that you're passionate about, which for me is health and wellness, that has served me tremendously well. By focusing in on those areas, it has certainly helped my career trajectory because even if there are different parts of healthcare, hospice and palliative care at my first association, non-prescription medicines and dietary supplements at my second, and now plasma-derived therapies, obviously very different parts of healthcare. But there is continuity that you're talking about medicine and helping people feel better, empowering them. I think you can pull that kind of a narrative through and it can help you as you're going for the next job and the next job because you have very pertinent experience to rely upon. Finally, I would encourage everybody to be resilient, adaptable. Don't be afraid of failure. I know that could be a little cliche because none of us really wants to fail, but I do think there's an opportunity in every failure or misstep. All right. Even when I talk to my team, I always say, if something is going wrong, raise your hand, talk to your manager, talk to me. Let's get this out there and figure out what's going wrong, not in a way to assign blame, but how do we fix it? How do we move forward and do better? But as leaders, we have to give ourselves that same kind of grace to stumble at times and learn from that and keep going.
Yeah, that resonates so well. That's where it's at. It's funny when you talk about being able to fail and it creating that kind of culture where people aren't afraid because then they do better and then they try things. Whereas if everyone's on eggshells and scared to do anything, and be innovative. You're just going to do the bare minimum, make sure you do it right and get out.
That's exactly right, because it does. It quashes risk taking. And of course, these need to be smart risks. You need to do your research. You also need to inform people. I personally, in my decision making process, check, and double check with my senior team or look for outside resources. And then maybe think about it for a while. But that doesn't mean we don't take risks or go out on the limb to try something new, because then you do risk inertia.
Definitely. These are such great insights. I know our listeners will just love them. But before we let you go, we have some just for fun questions we ask all of our guests in a
Oh
little
boy.
lightning round
Okay.
style here. So, first one is very easy. Where'd you grow up?
Greenwood, Indiana, a town south of Indianapolis.
Okay. All right. What is your Starbucks order?
Skim latte.
All right.
Delicious.
If you win the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
Yes. Yes. It's just such a part of who I am. I might take opportunities to do something different. I'm very happy with what I'm doing now. I think if you weren't worried about the financial underpinnings of work and you could do something that really feeds your soul, then that's the way I would go. But I think, yes, I would still work in some facet.
I like that approach. What's the last show that you binge watched?
Okay. Capote versus the Swans. I think that's what it's called. And Death and Other Details.
Oh, the first one I've heard such good things about it.
The Naomi Watson, that is fabulous. The entire cast is great. It encouraged me to buy the book that it's based on, which I plan to read on vacation and kind of get into the real details and see what the actual memoir was about. But it's a fascinating look at high society in that period of time.
Interesting.
Very nice. I'll have to check that out. I've heard a lot of good things too. It's very cool. What is a food you can't live without?
I think it's seafood in general. I'm just such a seafood person. All kinds of crab, shrimp, lobster. If that's on the menu, you can bet I'm going to order it.
Oh,
I'm the
too funny.
same.
That's a good
Yeah, it
one.
is
But
hard.
if I was really honest there too, and some of my team would tell you it's also Coke Zero, which I know is not good for me.
Gosh.
I understand that, but it gets me through the day.
Gotta do what
Sorry,
you
a
need to
little
do.
bit of a
It's
plug for Coke.
it's my crutch. I'm with you on that. Oh my gosh. I have way too much Coke Zero. Oh my goodness. All right. Last one. What's your bucket list travel destination?
One aspect of one of the best parts of this new position with PPTA is the international nature of my work. Since joining PPTA, some of my favorite places that I visited have been Portugal, London, which I loved, Barcelona, amazing, Shanghai. So this job has actually chipped away at my bucket list and just a couple weeks ago, I was in Tuscany and it was amazing. But I've yet to go to Paris, so that's definitely on my bucket list.
Oh,
And
nice.
Santorini. I want to go to Santorini. And then, of course, anything in the Caribbean, you can just plop me on a beach and I'll be just fine.
Amazing. That sounds so incredible. Christine and I both love traveling, so we're drooling over here listening to all
Yeah,
these
and it's always fun to hear
questions.
everybody's answers because I just add one more thing to my list every time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Paris is funny. I've only spent literally 1 day there, and my husband and I went, and he still makes fun of me because I ordered, I think, pizza or pasta or something, and he finally looked at me that day and was like, "I think I understand you now." He's like, "You view Europe as a bunch of Italian restaurants around its biggest Italian restaurant of Italy, you know?"
I love that. Right. There you go. So it wasn't escargot for you, Colleen.
Oh, I love
No.
escargot. Give me that in the garlic with some
Yep.
bread.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun and just such good advice and so many good insights. So thanks, Anita. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Love being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Association 100 podcast, brought to you by the A100 publishing team, powered by Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications. You can subscribe to the Association 100 podcast on Spotify so you'll never miss out, or listen via our website at theassociation100.com. Follow us for all the latest insights and trends impacting the world of associations. Thanks for tuning in.